Hello, you're watching Life Talk for Thursday, December 14th, 2017. I'm Mark Crutcher.
And I'm Renee Hobbs. Thanks for joining us.
Yes, and before we go any further, let me answer some questions here. I didn't get in a bar fight.
He looks a little bit different today.
Looks a little bit different.
Yes.
I had cataract surgery 2 days ago, and it's been a great thing. I mean, I'm seeing better, and I'm going to be, I have to have another one in January. I'm sorry, January 9th. I'll be doing it again for my other eye. Renee didn't hit me. My wife didn't hit me.
a little bruise
even
under
though,
your eye.
as much as they would like to.
That's not true.
But anyway, so I had cataract surgery, still a little bit bruised, but I'm going to be without glasses. That's going to be an amazing thing. I've had glasses.
For how many years?
55 years. I got glasses when I was 14.
Yeah, many years.
So for 55 years, I've had glasses, but now this cataract surgery, and it's going to take care of that. And it's an amazing thing. I mean, it's just my right eye that I can have already had done.
You can see better, much more clear. Things are brighter.
Brighter.
Yeah.
It's like I've been wearing sunglasses all this time because everything was, getting darker and darker. And I didn't realize that. I knew my eyes were getting worse, but I didn't know things were getting darker. Mm-hmm. But they were. And so, anyway, that's why I look like I look. So don't think I went out and, got in a bar fight or something or whatever. Anyway, before we get into the show, I want to also remind you, you've probably already seen some examples of this. We're going to be on kind of an irregular schedule here for a while because we're making a lot of changes here, and there'll be some upgrades to the studio and upgrades to Life Talk and things like that. So we're going to be on kind of an irregular schedule, and here in the next couple of weeks, it could be even on a more irregular schedule than what we have now. But pretty soon we'll get back on track, and Life Talk is going to be better than it ever was, and we're going to have some more features added to it, and we're going to have some more other types of video we'll be putting online. And so just bear with us a little bit, and it's going to get better. So anyway, Renee, we saw the situation down in Alabama with Roy Moore.
Yes, we did.
Being defeated.
Yes.
And
very depressing.
Yes. Now, we can't give any details about this. We're not at liberty to do that, but don't assume that it's totally over yet. There
are things going on behind the scenes.
Things going on behind the scenes that clearly apparently anyway. I don't have firsthand knowledge of it, but others have given us details of some potential voting irregularities and things like that. So there are people working on that, but let's assume for the moment that things don't change, that it stays like it is. And understand something. This is not the first time that the godless left has stolen an election. It's not the first time in a long shot. We just saw Al Franken resign.
Right.
He clearly stole that election. He won by 300 votes, and the amount of voting irregularities that were in that race made it clear that he stole that election. This woman Sanchez from California years ago stole an election from Bob Dornan, and she clearly stole it. There was you can have close elections, and you always have this thing of, they got votes they shouldn't have gotten, or they stole some votes. But in these two particular cases, Franken and this woman Sanchez in California, both hardcore, godless, leftist, Marxist, both of them obviously stole those elections. There was no doubt about that. And so that could be the case here. Who knows? And even if it is proven that it's stolen, that doesn't necessarily mean, as in these other cases, that it's going to be overturned. But let's assume for the moment that it stays like it is, and that you have a state like Alabama that is about as red a state as far as conservative values as Texas, maybe more so. And it's a shame that you now have this godless Marxist senator from there.
Well, what's more a shame is that the people are listening to the godless liberal media,
right? And
nobody knows what's true and what's not. Obviously, Judge Roy Moore knows what's true, and if it happened with these women, they know it's true. But he's not admitting to anything, and it's
just an accusation.
It's just an accusation, and they are listening to the pro-abortion media. Period.
Well, I've seen some of these leftists here recently. One woman just I think she's mentally deranged. I think she has mental problems. But she's basically saying it doesn't matter whether he did it or not. The accusation is enough. They're literally, the godless left is literally saying that. If you're just accused of this, you're guilty.
No.
And
that's not true.
And
it's not true at all.
It's not true at all. But nonetheless, that's their operating principle. But again, I go back to what we said here on the show a few weeks ago. Let's say that you believe that what Roy Moore is accused of doing, he did do. 40 years ago, he was a adult male who was
preying on little
preying
girls.
on 14-year-olds. Nobody accused him of having sex with them, just asking them for dates and taking them out and kissing them and whatever. Things he should not have been doing if he was doing them, which I don't buy into it. I can't see why this man went through all these elections in Alabama, state elections, and it never came out. But the second he ran for a federal office,
oh, yeah,
all of a sudden they come out of the woodwork.
Oh, yeah, definitely.
It's very suspicious.
It is very suspicious. And
all right, but so what? For the purpose of this election, then what that means is you're left with a choice between a man who 40 years ago did these things that he shouldn't have done, obviously, and another man who is a current baby killer. This guy has made it clear he supports abortion right up to the moment of birth.
yeah,
Any reason whatsoever, no reason whatsoever. He has categorically stated he would not restrict a woman's right to have an abortion under any circumstances at any time.
yeah,
So your choice was to vote between a guy who may have been a predator, sexual predator of young girls 40 years ago or 30 years ago, versus a guy who is today
a baby killer.
a baby killer.
Yeah,
And now, what disturbs me about this, I saw just this morning some early demographic results from the election in Alabama. The most astonishing thing to me is they said 68% of the people that voted for Roy Moore, when asked, said that abortion should be illegal under all circumstances, right? So if you ask people, do you think abortion should be illegal under all circumstances, you take all of those people, 68% of them voted for Roy Moore. But that means 32% of them voted for this
Jones.
this baby killer.
Yeah,
So the problem that we have in that case is really not an external one. It's an internal one in the pro-life movement. We've got people out here who claim to be pro-life and who, in this case, say abortion should be legal in every circumstance, who then turn around and vote for a self-professed baby killer. Where something like 70% of evangelicals voted for Roy Moore. That means 30% of evangelicals voted for this godless degenerate.
yeah,
So if you take the 30% of the evangelicals, that should have been Roy Moore's vote 100%, and certainly 100% of the people who say abortion should be legal in all circumstances, those people should have been 100% for Roy Moore. If you transfer that over, then he won. This is not even a close election.
It just doesn't make sense.
So we've got internal problems in the pro-life movement. I'm writing an article right now about this very issue.
Right.
And
the pro-life movement needs to be redefined here.
we need to go back to our
we
roots.
need to be reminded of why we're in this battle and who we're fighting for.
Right, and what's at stake. And I think sometimes we get so caught up in the day-to-day conduct of the battle, we forget what the battle is about. That's what you're saying, is we need to go back and remember those things.
We do.
But the other thing that we need to talk about again is something we've talked about here before. Not only if all of the evangelicals and the people of faith had voted for Roy Moore, he would have won. And if not only had all the people who claimed that abortion should be illegal under all circumstances had voted for him, he would have won. He would have also won if he got just a tiny bit of support from the National Republican Party. If he'd have just gotten a little bit of their support, he'd have won as well. When you have an election this close, any little thing can sway it. The Democrats went all in. There was no argument that the Democrats were on the playing field 100% of the time, and yet they squeaked out this just sliver of a victory.
Yeah, and they're also saying that the African Americans came out and voted stronger than they ever have before too for Jones.
Right, and I saw a thing in the paper the other day. Pastor of a Baptist church in Alabama, and believe me, as you know, I'm not picking on Alabama. I was born in Birmingham. I was born in Alabama, so I'm not picking on them. But this Baptist church in someplace in Alabama, Black Baptist church and Black Baptist preacher, and he had come out and publicly in the church during services and endorsed Jones. Now, two things are a question here. Where is the IRS? Or is the IRS going to come down on this guy? If they've got a 501c3, he just violated it to the point that he should be have his C3 taken away.
That's right.
I'll guarantee you they won't do it. They will not do it.
They're
I've
not
seen
gonna
this
touch it.
time and time and time again. I saw right here in Dallas, back when Al Gore was running, he went to a black church down there and exploited them, and tried to manipulate them, and did. And the pastor right after got up and introduced Jesse Jackson was there with Al Gore. And then the pastor comes up with Jesse Jackson and Al Gore and tells everybody in that church to vote for Al Gore. Where was the IRS on that deal?
Yeah.
They were nowhere to be found.
Yeah.
Never happened.
They don't want to. Yeah.
But the point that we need to make sure people understand, and this is not a bad thing, this is just the way it is. The pro-life movement needs to recognize that we're alone in, we're out here, Renee, like we're on the front lines of the battle, and we're facing the pro-aborts over there. And we keep looking behind us and
To
kind of going
see
like
if
this.
anybody's going to come and help, come to our rescue.
Right. To see, mainly what we do is we run up to the top of the hill that's behind us, and we look for the church and the Republican Party and say, come on, guys, let's go. And they, okay, we're with you all the way. Now you go back down there and fight. And they never come over that hill.
Yeah, and the people in office. Yeah.
And what we need to accept is we keep waiting on them to come. They're not coming. They're never going to come. And so we need to quit worrying about them. We fight the battle that's in front of us. We fight what the real enemy is. And God will deal with these people. All these people who claim to be Christians and evangelicals and conservative Catholics that are on the other side of the hill and are never coming over, and the Republicans and all these people that claim they're so pro-life and all this, God will deal with them. That's not our problem. He's their problem. We need to fight the battle that's in front of us, and we need to recognize that we are alone in this battle. That's just a reality. It's not going to change.
Right.
And the quicker we come to that realization, the better off we'll be. And, people outside Texas are people that have never studied the Alamo. And like any good Texan, I'm going to throw the Alamo out there every chance I get. Well, you do the same thing, right?
Yes.
Yeah, because you're a good Texas girl.
That's right.
But anyway, if you study the Alamo, when that event started, when that whole episode down there started, and Santa Anna the Mexican general started surrounding the Alamo with all these thousands and thousands of Mexican troops. The men in the Alamo were waiting on replacements to come in from around Texas. They were getting volunteers, and especially the ones from Goliad. There were, 600 soldiers, I think, in Goliad that were supposed to come to the Alamo, come to the relief of the Alamo. And the guys at the Alamo were waiting on all these people to come. And so if you read what they were writing, their mindset, they had a certain mindset about this battle, what it was really about and what was going on. And they're waiting. They keep looking out over the walls and seeing, when are these guys coming? And then Travis, who was the commander of the Alamo, got word that the men at Goliad had been captured by Santa Anna soldiers. And it's a horrific thing that happened. I mean, Santa Anna's men literally piled them up in a big pile and burned them all, killed every one of them. And Travis got that word, and I think 30 or 35 soldiers showed up from Gonzales, Texas, and that was it. That's all that came. So you had 187 men in the Alamo, thousands and thousands of Mexican soldiers outside. So the odds were, you knew what
They're
was gonna
defeated,
happen.
right?
And Travis called all those men together because Santa Anna didn't want to fight there. Santa Anna wanted to go after Sam Houston. And Santa Anna didn't want to fight at the Alamo, but he couldn't leave those men behind him. If he turned around and took off after Sam Houston, the guys at the Alamo would be behind him. Then he'd be caught between two armies, the Houstons and the people from the Alamo. So Santa Anna wanted to leave and go chase Sam Houston. He sent a runner into the men at the Alamo and said, anybody that wants to leave, I'll give you safe passage. You can take your horses, you can take your guns, you can take whatever you want. If you'll leave the Alamo and not fight with us here, I'll let you go.
Right.
And Travis called these men together, and we always hear so-and-so drew a line in the sand. Well, this is where that came from. That's what Travis
That saying said.
That's where that saying started.
Yeah.
Was at the Alamo.
Right.
And Travis called all the men together, and told them what the situation was, and said, "You guys need to understand, nobody's coming.
You're on your own."
We're alone. Nobody's coming to help."
And then reality hit for the men, I'm sure.
Right.
This is it.
And he drew the line in the sand and says, "Anybody wants to leave, the gate's open. Anybody wants to leave, cross that line, and you can walk out, and that's it."
What a frightening moment.
Yeah, but I'm staying.
Right.
He said, "I'm staying here." Not one man left. And so they closed the gates, and of course, 13 days later, they were all killed. But that 13 days bought the time for Sam Houston to get his army ready and to get into a battlefield. These men died.
Right.
And if you read the things that they wrote, especially on the night of the 12th before the day of the 13th battle, they knew what their fate was. I mean, you got 6,000 or 7,000 Mexicans surrounding you, and there's 180 of you, and you're cooped up in this little fort. The die is cast, right?
Right, sure.
So they knew what their fate was.
Yep.
But it was clear from things that they wrote that they never understood what was really going on. They never had a good sense of where we're headed with this thing until they were told that you're alone and nobody's coming to help you. Then they could make a hard decision. Okay, do I want to stay and give my life for this, or do I want to leave? And they all chose to stay.
Right.
And that's what I'm trying to get across to the people in the pro-life movement. We're alone. You got to accept that. That doesn't mean we can't win. We are going to win. We're winning right now, and we're going to win. God promised us this victory. He said the gates of hell won't prevail against you. And if you don't think the front door of an abortion clinic is a gate into hell, you haven't been paying attention. So there's no doubt that we're going to win. But don't sit here and wait for the Republican Party and the church to come riding over that hill. They're not coming. They don't have the courage to ride over that hill. They like it on the other side of the hill.
Where they're safe.
Where they're nice and safe. And so they're not coming.
Right.
And so like the guys at the Alamo, we need to take that into consideration.
Yeah.
And just remember, you're in this by yourself. And that's fine. You know what? I'd rather have 100 people that are totally committed in my little gang or army or whatever it might be than 1,000 people that I can't count on if the bullets start flying and they run back over the hill.
Right.
Because they're nothing but in the way.
Yeah. Yep.
It's like Patton used to say,
What's that?
lead me, follow me, or get out of my way.
Oh, yeah.
Right.
It's so true. So all we have to do is put on the full armor of God and fight like
Charge that.
we've never fought before.
That's right.
Yeah.
Charge that gate of hell.
He's on our side.
That's what we need to do.
That's right.
Now, before we go, we had a viewer, a woman named Cody Hart, ask if we could do a study on how many women die from abortion.
From legal abortion.
From legal abortion. Well, first off, we've got on our website, safeandlegal.com, that's a Life Dynamics website, we've got several hundred names on there of women that have died that we have the documentation for here in the office.
That's right.
Death certificate, autopsy, whatever it might be, police report, whatever it might be. But as for the question of whether we would do a study on that, it'd be a complete waste of time. You'll never know how many women died from legal abortion.
No.
Because of all the shenanigans that the abortion industry has done
Yes.
to hide those deaths.
Yep. Blaming it on pregnancy and
Blaming it on all kinds of things.
right.
And when I wrote Lyme 5, we had a chapter in there about women who died from abortion. And that's when we first started coming across things that have been done. I want to give just one example of this so people can understand how this system works.
It's stunning.
It is.
I mean, it's just
sickening.
it is a joke.
Right. Our surveillance of morbidity and mortality surveillance of abortion is, like you said, it's a complete joke. First off, the CDC is the one that creates these figures, the Centers for Disease Control.
Right, and they're ran by an abortionist and
Pro-aborts, yeah.
NAF.
Right.
Yeah,
It's
the pro-abortion side.
right. The abortion surveillance branch of the CDC has always been headed and is headed today by people that are raging pro-aborts. Most often, it's been headed by people who are practicing abortionists, like Gates and Grimes have both practicing abortionists. Gates, when he was running the abortion surveillance branch of the CDC, he ran it on 2 different occasions. When he was running it, he was moonlighting while he was at the CDC as an abortionist at Atlanta Abortion Clinic. It's unbelievable
What they get away with.
what
yeah.
they get away with.
Yep.
And I raised a ruckus with them years ago with the CDC, people above the abortion surveillance branch. And I said, I called one day, I said, let me ask you a question. You have a tobacco surveillance division there that surveils the health effects of smoking.
Mm-hmm.
Would you allow someone to run that division who was a paid employee of R.J. Reynolds Tobacco Company? And this guy laughed at me. He said, well, obviously not. He said, not only would we not do it, but it's illegal. We're governed by laws passed by Congress that said that would be a conflict of interest that we couldn't tolerate.
Right.
And I said, well, you've got people running the abortion surveillance branch right now, right this minute as we speak. The man that runs it is a practicing abortionist.
And that's not a conflict of interest?
And that's not a conflict of interest. Now, to give you an example of how they have, we've seen them do all kinds of things, change the way that reporting is done. And let's remember something. 20% of all the abortions in this country happen in one state, in California. California does not report morbidity or mortality statistics to the CDC.
Or New York, right?
Well, there's others. Yeah, I think New York doesn't do it
Yeah.
as well. But California, 20% of all the abortions in the country happen in that one state, and they don't report morbidity and mortality. But to give you an example of how bad this was, we found, just with our meager resources here, a little pro-life group in Denton, Texas, with a tiny budget. The CDC's budget, if people think this is a little mom-and-pop operation,
Not hardly.
when we looked at it in 96, and you know it's a heck of a lot higher now, but in 96, their budget was $250,000 a day. I'm sorry, $250,000 an hour.
Oh my gosh.
And abortion is the number one most commonly performed surgical procedure. They had almost no stats on it. But just to give you an example of what they were doing, they were taking, before abortion was legalized, the abortion surveillance branch was at the CDC even back when abortion was legal. I mean, illegal. Let's say that a woman went into an abortion clinic or had an abortion in those days, an illegal abortion, except in certain states. But let's say she had an abortion and it was an incomplete abortion or what they call a missed abortion. And let's say that, because that meant that after the abortion she was still pregnant. Let's say then that 2 days later, that was an ectopic pregnancy, let's say, and it ruptured and she died. They counted that as a complication of abortion because had the abortion been completed and been done properly, she would not have died, right?
Right.
So the CDC counted that as a complication of abortion. Once abortion became legal, those particular deaths started to skyrocket. Guess what the CDC did under Grimes?
They needed to change that.
They did change it.
Yeah.
They did change it so that a death due to a missed abortion did not count against abortion. They counted it against pregnancy. They call it a complication of pregnancy.
Right.
So what you then had was, you had a woman who was killed by an abortion, but they didn't count it against abortion, so that made it a win right there. Then they took it over and counted it against pregnancy.
Right.
Then they would go out and say, oh, by the way, statistically, abortion is safer than pregnancy. Well, sure, if you're counting half the abortion deaths, not counting them against abortion, but counting them against pregnancy.
Yeah.
And we saw this time and time and time again in a lot of different areas.
Yeah, it's manipulated. We'll never know what the truth is.
That we'll never know, and it's impossible to know. So, Cody, to answer your question is, no, we're not going to do a study to try to figure it out because it would be a complete waste of time. And what I'll tell you is, anybody who tells you what the mortality rate is for abortion, or even the morbidity rate, which is just injuries, anybody tells you what the mortality rate is for abortion, they are lying to you because they don't know. Nobody knows. It's impossible to know. The abortion industry has purposely manipulated the way things are reported so that you can never know how many die. And we never will. And they avoid even talking about there's a link between abortion and breast cancer. Because if there is, and we've seen this spike in the last 40 or 50 years and women having dying from breast cancer,
Yeah.
how many of those do you have to attribute to the abortion that they had?
Right.
And we've seen a spike in things like placenta previa and placenta incretia, ectopic pregnancies. All of these things have gone up dramatically since the legalization of abortion.
Right.
And yet they will not study them to see if there's a link between them. And one of the real clever things that the abortion industry has done is, and you know, I've started collecting material on this. We're going to write a report on it at some point. It's what I call the ABC, the A to B to C factor. The abortion industry will come out here and say, for example, there's no evidence that abortion causes sterility, right? So abortion does not cause sterility.
Right.
Well, the fact is, it doesn't. But abortion can cause placenta previa, or it can cause Asherman syndrome, or it can cause placenta accretia, and those things can cause
Right.
sterility.
That's right.
And what they're doing is, it would be like if the people that manufacture alcohol came out here and said, look, there is absolutely no evidence, none, that being drunk causes car wrecks. There isn't. There is no evidence of that. But being drunk causes a failure to be able to control your movements, failure to keep your judgment.
Yeah.
It can cause all of these things. You can lose dexterity.
Right.
You can lose judgment. All these things.
Right.
So yes, alcohol does not cause car wrecks, but it causes.
It's what happens
In the
internally.
Right. In the meantime.
Right.
So in other words, A causes B and B causes C,
Right.
but A doesn't cause C directly.
No, it makes sense to me.
And that's what they rely upon. So they'll say it doesn't cause sterility, or it doesn't cause breast cancer, or it doesn't cause this, or it doesn't cause that. Well, it may not, but it causes something in the meantime
Right.
that causes it.
That's right.
And it's like, placenta previa is one of the most common things that abortion is known to cause, and then that's known to have dire health consequences for women later on down the road. But the abortion industry will never, and the CDC, which is run by the abortion industry, will never say that abortion can lead to these things. So, and death is one of them. And so I want to urge everybody out there in the audience to go on to safeandlegal.com, which is a website we have. And I'll tell you right up front, it's a very, very graphic and very difficult website to go to. Because of some of the photographs that are on there. But
I'd like to also have people get Line 5. It's still current today, even though it was written several years ago. It's still happening today, if not worse.
Everything in there is at least as bad, not worse.
That's right.
And so thank you for bringing that up. But so again, back to your question, Cody. Again, we're not going to do a study on it, and I think anybody that does do a study on it is totally wasting their time, because the abortion industry has done such a spectacular job of covering their tracks.
Yeah.
And when you have a government agency with 6,000 employees, they had 6,000 employees and $250,000 an hour budget when I wrote Line 5 in '96. So it's much bigger than that.
Oh, sure, yeah.
And by the way, they had 6,000 employees at that time. And this is a government agency. It's a corrupt one, but it's a government agency. They had 6,000 employees at that time. Abortion was the most commonly performed invasive surgical procedure in America. And yet, of those 6,000 employees, all the morbidity and mortality statistics put out by the CDC were required to be filtered through one woman. And she was a board member of the National Abortion Federation.
How about that?
Isn't that weird?
Isn't that quaint?
Isn't that convenient?
That's very convenient. Everything's filtered through her.
Right. Now, I would love to get somebody. I'd like to have the head of the CDC. They won't. I've tried to get a hold of these people. They quit taking our phone calls because we were asking so many questions. They literally quit taking our phone calls. We got through to one woman one day who had been talking to us and had been friendly and giving us information, and she said, "I have been instructed not to speak with you again."
Wow.
Because we were uncovering what was going on there.
Yeah.
But I would love to ask them very clearly. You put out all these statistics, for example, on gunshot wounds and how dangerous guns are, or how dangerous they're not, or whatever, right? Would you gather up all this data on gun violence and then turn it over to the NRA and then let them filter it out and then give it back to you before you put it out. Would you allow that to happen?
Not hardly.
That's exactly what they do
They're
with
very
abortion.
biased. Yeah.
Yeah, that's exactly what they do with abortion statistics.
Yeah.
Or cigarettes, all the cigarette data goes through R.J. Reynolds before you put it out, or all the information on alcohol goes through the distillers associations or whatever before you put it out. They don't do that.
Right.
They were actually running a hotline at National Abortion Federation clinics several years ago, back when we were doing Line 5. If you called that hotline to find out how safe or whatever abortion was, the CDC was running this hotline. You call the CDC and to find out how safe or dangerous abortion is. It was the National Abortion Federation people that answered the phone. The call got routed to them. And what they would then say is, well, the CDC has the following figures. Well, the following figures all came from the GIPSA studies by the National Abortion.
Corrupt.
It's
Deceptive.
totally corrupt.
You can't even. That's.
You can't even imagine how
Yeah.
corrupt this system is.
Yeah.
But anyway, so anytime I hear, you hear this stuff all the time. Oh, this is the CDC said this is going to be the worst flu epidemic in our history. I don't believe anything the CDC says because I've seen it how political.
You
it is.
can't trust what they say.
You can't
Yeah.
trust a thing they say.
Yep.
I remember when Line 5 came out and we put this stuff out about the CDC. I got a call from a guy one day, and he was a big Second Amendment guy, and he said he discovered the same thing about them. They had put out statistics showing that when somebody buys a gun to protect their home, that gun was like 8 times more likely to kill a member of the
A
home
family member.
than
Yeah.
it was an intruder. But what they left out of the equation was that of those eight times as many people, like 75% of those were suicides. Well, those people are going to commit suicide, whether it's with a gun or
They're going to find.
they're going to find another way.
They're gonna find a
So
way.
if you took the suicide numbers out of it, then what you found out was that gun was more likely to kill an intruder than it was a member of the family. But that's not what the CDC put out.
Yeah.
And he was suggesting that we'd start doing a study on that. I said, look, we got our hands full with the abortion issue. But
Yeah,
anyway,
definitely.
we're way over on time this time. But
I just want to say hi to some people real fast.
okay, go ahead.
Okay, thank you. They said hi to you too.
Oh, good.
Okay, hey Melissa, and then Donna. Hey Donna, and then Dwight from something Massachusetts. I can't say the name
Can't
of the
read.
city. Sorry, Dwight. Thanks for listening though. And that's it, I guess. And Leroy, what's up, Leroy?
Yeah, this Massachusetts has weird names like Texas has.
Oh.
People from there would look here and say, Waxo. How do you pronounce
Waxahachie.
Waxahachie or whatever. So we got our own, and most of those are Indian names.
Yeah.
That we can't seem to pronounce. But anyway,
I left out one other person. Hold on. Hi, Kathy. She
hi.
has my last name.
Oh, good.
Yeah.
Oh, really?
Kathy Hobbs.
Kathy Hobbs. Okay.
Yeah, we're not related.
Okay, good, I guess. Anyway, again, I wasn't beat up. I didn't get in a fight. My wife didn't hit me in my sleep. Renee didn't hit me here at the office, although they would like to. But very often they would like to. They threaten to, as a matter of fact. But anyway, appreciate you watching. If there's anything you'd like to see us talk about on Life Talk, be sure and let Renee know. And if we use your subject on the show, we'll be sure and give you a Life Dynamics mug or a Life Talk mug. Is that it?
Yeah, and Cody, if you're watching, I sent you a private message. Get back with me, and I'll get your address so I can send you a mug.
Right, absolutely. Thanks for joining us. Until next week, remember, Life Dynamics is not here to put up a good fight. We're here to win. Is how the killing will